Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 31st of August 2022, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. And your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish, and we're delighted to be joined by the trio of David Scott, Debbie Evans, and also Alex Thompson from the Netherlands.
Well, we're going to get straight on with vaccines.
Indeed. So it appears the government is very confused about advice. Debbie, what are you discovering and why is this so important for the public?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And yes, there's a lot of confusion over a government document that's been highlighted with regards to toxicity and data for pregnant women and breastfeeding women. Now, this all started from a tweet where somebody had discovered a government document. And as a result, there have been a few articles published. And I know that we're going to see one in the Euro that explains that really what happened here was that a post which gathered over 250 retweets and hundreds of comments appears to show advice regarding the COVID vaccine for pregnant and breastfeeding women that contradicts the guidance from the UK government during the pandemic. In the post, Twitter account @LawOrFiction wrote, "Since the start, government has promised the jabs are safe for pregnant and breastfeeding women. There was no data then, and suddenly they now say lack of data means it cannot be declared safe." Now, if we go on and just sort of delve into this a little bit deeper to see what else they've said that really, back along in 2020, the government had said that there was toxicity issues with the vaccine for pregnant women. However, Sir Christopher Whitty at the time was saying that the vaccine was extremely safe. And you can see there that there's a quote there from Professor Christopher Whitty saying the COVID vaccine in pregnancy was a very good thing to do for your newborn baby. And then there was another article in the American Vagabond as well saying exactly the same. And then all of a sudden last night, the Department of Health were very quick to jump onto Twitter and to jump onto Facebook to say incorrect information about the COVID vaccine and pregnancy is spreading online. Extensive data shows the vaccine is safe and highly effective for pregnant and breastfeeding women. So let's have a look at the document that's actually caused all of the confusion. And the document's called the Summary of the Public Assessment Report for COVID-19 Vaccine Pfizer-BioNTech. And you can see there in the bottom right-hand corner the toxicity conclusions. And I don't know if you want to read it out, Mike or Brian. It's a little bit small for me, so you might read it out a little bit.
Okay, it says the absence of reproductive toxicity data is a reflection of the speed of development to the first identity and select COVID-19 mRNA vaccine for clinical testing and its rapid development to meet the ongoing urgent health need. In principle, a decision on licensing a vaccine could be taken in these circumstances without data from reproductive toxicity studies in animals, but there are studies ongoing and these will be provided when available. In the context of supply under Regulation 174, it is considered that sufficient reassurance of safe use of the vaccine in pregnant women cannot be provided at the present time. However, use in women of childbearing potential could be supported, provided healthcare professionals are advised to rule out known or suspected pregnancy prior to vaccination. Women who are breastfeeding should also not be vaccinated. These judgments reflect the absence of data at the present time and do not reflect a specific finding of concern. Adequate advice with regard to women of childbearing potential, pregnant women and breastfeeding women has been provided in both the information for UK healthcare professionals and the information for UK recipients. That's a pretty mealy-mouthed statement, Debbie.
It is, and that document was updated, which is the confusing issue in all of this. That document was updated on the 16th of August 2022, so the dates are very important here. But I mean, quite clearly, you can see from that document that breastfeeding women should not be vaccinated. And I looked in depth at that document, and I'd be very interested to know what other people think. So you can also see in that document that we've got mentions of carcinogenity, where it says carcinogenity studies with BNT162b2 have not been conducted, as the components of all vaccine constructs are lipids and RNA that are not expected to have carcinogenic or tumorigenic potential. It also says in the middle, no single dose toxicity studies have been performed. It also goes on to say, with regards to excretion, no excretion studies have been conducted with COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. Again, with pharmacokinetic at the bottom, no PK drug interaction studies have been conducted. So we can see clearly from this that there are a lot of studies that haven't been conducted. And if we go on again and look at pharmacokinetics, and I'd be very interested if there are any experts out there that can maybe, and this just will illustrate the confusion around all of this, is that in that paper it talks about N1 methyl pseudoridian. Apologies for the pronunciation. Now, I just went to look for the data safety sheet on this product, and I could see that it said that classified that the data was classified based on available data. So I don't know anything about this, but this has come up in this paper, adding to the confusion. So then I thought, well, let's go and see what Sir Christopher Whitty said back in November 2021 with regards to his advice for pregnant and breastfeeding women. So I don't know if you've got the clip there of, it's a very short clip from Professor Christopher Whitty, who clearly is urging people and pregnant women, I might say, to take the vaccine.
And the second point I wanted to make on this, like to pull out in particular the issue of women who are pregnant or intending to get pregnant. And I would just like to give you some fairly stark facts about this, because this is a major concern. Based on academic data from the 1st of February through to the 30th of September, so aiming off, because obviously early on in that period people of this age would not have been vaccinated, 1,714 pregnant women were admitted to hospital with COVID. Of those, 1,681, which is say 98%, had not been vaccinated. And if you go to those who were very severely ill in intensive care, of 235 women admitted to ICU, 232 of them, over 98%, had not been vaccinated. These are preventable admissions to ICU, and there have been deaths. All the medical opinion is really clear that the benefits of vaccination far outweigh the risks in every area. This is a universal view among doctors and among the midwife advisory groups, among the scientific advisory groups. So can I please encourage all women who are pregnant or wishing to become pregnant to get their vaccination? And I would extend that also, incidentally, to flu, which is also very dangerous for women who are pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, I thought his voice sounded quite shaky there, actually. So bearing in mind what Sir Christopher Whitty had said, I thought I'll go and have a look and see what other people are saying. So the next few slides are going to be just whizzing through. But first of all, the one that I really want to highlight on is the MHRA. And so I took this yesterday, last night. So this is up to date. And you can see the date on there says updated 16th of August 2022. So let's look at the wording very, very carefully. Pregnancy, there is limited experience with use of COVID-19 mRNA vaccine BNT162b2 in pregnant women. Then you go on with breastfeeding. It is unknown whether the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine BNT162b2 is excreted in human milk. It also says, sorry, I missed that little bit at the top, administration of the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine BNT162b2 in pregnancy should only be considered when the potential benefits outweigh any potential risks for the mother and fetus. So clearly, the MHRA are not saying definitively one way or the other. Actually, if anything, they're sitting on the fence. So then I thought, okay, well, that's what the MHRA are saying. Let's go and see what Scotland are saying. So we're just going to whiz through, just so that you know that I've been to see what people are saying. So in Scotland, nothing to see here. Go and have the vaccine. Then we'll flip to the UKHSA. And again, you'll be able to see, no, nothing to see here. They don't seem to have heard about this paper or the toxicity. Carry on, everybody that's pregnant, go and have the vaccine. And clearly the chief midwife in London, she says, that's Kate Brintworth, she's saying exactly the same. Pregnant women, please be assured the vaccine is safe. Please take it as soon as possible. In fact, some people are saying it's even beneficial to the pregnant woman and their babies. And then we can flip on to bumps. And bumps is the best use of medicines in pregnancy. So, and also the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists are all saying the same. Go and have the jab, go and have the injection. Nothing to see here. So, and the BBC too, they're saying it. Everybody's saying it. Go and have the injection. So clearly we've got a huge amount of confusion. But my questions is still, why has the government still got that advisory sheet up on its website, clearly recommending caution, which we've always known with regards to pregnant women, because in my day, we couldn't even eat soft cheese, let alone take an experimental injection. And I know David's got quite a lot to say on this as well. So I'd like to hand over to him, because the confusion over all of this, and I know Professor Fenton has been very vocal on Twitter. So for anybody that wants to see what Professor Fenton is saying, have a look at his Twitter. But David, your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I was trying to get a handle on exactly what this information was telling us, because you pointed out the two pieces of information that very clearly says there's an absence of data and there's a risk, against a plethora of advice to go ahead and get vaccinated. Just to give one example of the advice to go ahead, a quote here from Dr. June Rain, Chief Executive of the MHRA, quote, "We want to reassure all pregnant women that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective for them to use at all stages of pregnancy. Our rigorous safety monitoring of these vaccines in pregnancy shows that vaccines are safe and there's no increase of pregnancy complications, miscarriage or stillbirth. The data highlights the importance of those who are pregnant receiving the vaccine. Our advice remains that the benefits of vaccination outweigh the risks for most people, including those who are pregnant. We encourage pregnant women to come forward and receive the vaccine. Please speak to your doctor and midwife if you have any questions." So again, very clear advice from Dr. June, right? But this is MHRA talking about risk assessment, and we've been after them for risk assessments for 15 months, and we can't get a single risk assessment out of them. They don't seem to exist, and we know there's no process for analysing the yellow card data. So I went to look for what the government line was in this. So I found on Twitter Dr. Victoria Mail of the Faculty of Medicine. She's a lecturer in reproductive immunology at Imperial College London, and she's coming out with her analysis of this, which is very much the government line. Imperial College, it's what you would expect. These are the experts that the government are referring to. And she says, well, the data's old data. So it goes, but although it's been refreshed in the last few days and not changed, it originally came in December 2020. So it's old data, and it's been substituted, it's been replaced by independent studies by other people, not by Pfizer. Pfizer haven't got anything further to say on this. Pfizer haven't got any more data. That's why this still shows there's no toxicology information that shouldn't be used on pregnant women, because Pfizer have nothing to say otherwise. But independent studies have. This raises certain questions. I'll come to those in just a minute. She also has an explainer, which she's got online, that analyses these things. So she says, in response to the question, is it safe to have COVID vaccine during pregnancy? She says, yes, the safety of COVID vaccination in pregnancy has been monitored in a number of ways. Passive monitoring schemes such as Yellow Card in UK collect information that doctors, patients and the families reports. Neither of these schemes has detected adverse events occurring more often following COVID vaccination than they normally do in pregnancy. In the UK, on the 16th of August 21, at which point 55,000 pregnant people had been vaccinated, the MHRA released a statement saying there is no pattern from the reports to suggest that any of the COVID-19 vaccinations used in the UK or any reactions to these vaccinations increase the risk of miscarriage or stillbirth. So they're saying 55,000, and essentially they're looking at the yellow card system as proof. Now, this brings up several questions that are not answered. Firstly, the yellow card system currently has 818 doctors, families, and women who have reported what they perceive as an adverse reaction of miscarriage following the vaccination. Now, I would have thought in any other case that would have been a huge red flag, but 818, they're saying, no, there's been so many women vaccinated that's normal. But it's not clear whether they're factoring in the underreporting in the yellow card system. They used to say 10%, if you're lucky, of very serious reactions, maybe only 1 or 2% of less serious reactions. So how many actual miscarriages does 818 reports represent? Is it 8,000? Is it more? We don't know, and they're not analysing it. Secondly, they're not analysing when the vaccination was administered. Was it in the first trimester or was it later in pregnancy? Because that hugely skews the data, because almost all miscarriages are in the first 3 months. All of this brings me to the questions. Clearly, there's been a change in the government advice. We don't know when. It would be good to know when. When that change was made, what data was it based on? We don't know that either. And was that data substantial? Did it include risk assessment or did it not? And finally, if the data was not sufficient, and my fear is that's the case, why was the decision made? Was it made in order to bolster the general SAGE-motivated psychological manipulation of the population as a whole to get vaccinated? Did they take the decision that to say to all women under 40, there's a risk here, it's unacceptable if you're pregnant or might get pregnant, don't take the vaccine, that they took the view that that would undermine the entire vaccination program and undermine the messaging, and therefore they took the decision? Or did they take the decision based on objective, rigorously analysed data with a quantitative risk assessment? I think we need to know which it is.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'll just say one of the comments in our chat box as Debbie and David were covering that was insanity. And I think that's an appropriate comment, but it's malicious because at the end of the day, women are being harmed, children are being harmed. So we need some answers from the MHRA and the Commission on Human Medicines.
Yes, well, we got a bit of a preview of this, but Debbie, one final graphic here, our sincere condolences.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this because there are an awful lot of families out there that death's not yet explained. They don't know why their loved one died. And this was sent to me in memorial to Simon, and I thought I would just pop that up, and our condolences to him and the thousands of others, including children. And also just to highlight the candlelit vigil to be held in Manchester. Sorry, it's a little bit small, so could you just clarify the date for me, Mike or Brian?
So it's St. Peter's Square, that's M25DB, Thursday the 8th of September from 4 till 7 p.m.
Yeah, okay, well, look, let's move on. And sticking with mortality, the latest all-cause mortality statistics are out from the Office for National Statistics. They were tweeting about this morning. And if we look at the far right-hand side of this graph, which runs from January 2020 to up to the 19th of August 2022, we see another week of excess mortality and another week of silence more or less from the mainstream media, but certainly from politicians. So 10,982 deaths registered in England and Wales in the week ending 19th of August 2022. That's an increase compared to the previous week, which was 10,355. And there were 18.6%, sorry, that was 18.6% above the 5-year average, so 1,719 excess deaths. And of those, only 551 mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, and a smaller proportion of those again where the death certificate claimed that COVID-19 was the underlying cause. That's just for England and Wales. If we take the UK as a whole, it was 66 deaths, which was 17.8% above the 5-year average. So the other regions of the UK doing a little bit better. But nonetheless, we continue to see the most excess deaths taking place in private homes as people continue to be sent home or refuse to go to hospital. And as I say, complete silence on the causes of this. So that's the situation continues to deteriorate, and virtually nothing from a politician or a media outlet on it.
Or appropriate civil servant either, particularly the NHS might.
Yeah, so let's move on to economic news. And well, inflation, if you remember last week, Citibank was suggesting was going to head up towards 18.6%. Goldman Sachs in the last day or so have said, in fact, their assessment is going to go up to 22%, mostly driven by energy costs, of course, and well, oil rises on concern. Oil prices are rising on concerns about higher demand and supply shortfall. That continues to say. Now, what fascinates me about what's going on at the moment is that this is effectively a continuation of the effects of it, at least, are a continuation of the types of effects of lockdown policy on the economy. So we're seeing more and more commentary like this in the mainstream press. As Sky News tweeting out, pubs and breweries are seeing spiraling costs that are wiping out profits. It questions why on earth they would bother to open their doors going forward. Well, in fact, many are considering not, or perhaps pubs less likely, but restaurants certainly intending to shut down over the winter. And we've got another tweet here from Good Morning Britain. It's not viable for us anymore to keep afloat. They're totally unreasonable figures. I think that the coming winter time, most businesses will come to their knees. So I already know of a couple of restaurants that are intending to close over the winter because of the cost of staying open in terms of energy and the fact that they don't get the same footfall in the winter as they do in the summer. So
I was just wanted to add there, Mike, and we're also hearing the butchers are now talking about closing because they can't afford the electricity to keep their fridges and freezers going.
In the meantime, the energy companies themselves, according to Bloomberg, UK sees up to £170 billion excess profits for energy firms. Estimates over the next 2 years show potential of windfall tax. Well, I'm not sure that that's going to help. But let's just very briefly have a look at what Boris had to say, because he was being interviewed by PA, and the interviewer actually put in a couple of sentences really a good description of how dire the situation is at the moment. And let's see what Boris's response to that was.
Ambulances queuing outside hospitals, food banks turning people away, thousands of migrants arriving every week illegally, wages falling at the fastest rate since the 1950s, a recession looming, strikes by rail workers, the Royal Mail, BT and Dockers, inflation at 10%, rising crime, drug deaths are rising, large numbers of unexplained excess deaths this summer, constant travel disruption, a shortage of key workers, sterling at a new low against the dollar. Even the Eurostars aren't going to go to Disneyland anymore. Many people, though, think, Prime Minister, in a serious way, that Britain isn't working for them, that it is broken. And this has happened on your watch.
Yes, it is absolutely true that because of Putin's war in Ukraine, we have pressures on the cost of living. But we have the financial strength to get through them. And what we are also doing is making sure that we have the long-term British energy supplies that we need to get our people through. So just look at you, and you talk about people coming to this country. Actually, that is just a symptom of why this country is one of the most successful on earth. Of course people want to come and live here. Of course it's a perennial difficulty to stop people coming here illegally, but we're taking powers to do that, and I'm pleased we're doing it.
So David, very briefly, just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, for a start, that it's Putin's fault is a lie, right? The reason that we got runaway inflation is not to do with simply Putin's invasion of Ukraine or operations in the Ukraine. It's to do with the fact that we were printing money at an unprecedented rate as we shut the real economy down for about 18 months, completely unnecessarily, because Boris Johnson and his government lost the nerve and started to allow Chris Whitty and co to run the country, and it was a disaster. And modelling from Imperial College to run the country. That's what's generated the inflation, not anything else. And if we're talking about energy policy, we've been Nicola Sturgeon's been posing outside power stations being detonated and flattened by explosive, smiling all over her face because, hey, coal's history. We have destroyed our energy independence, and who's sorry now? We are. This is all government policy. I do wish somebody, somewhere, sometime would actually take responsibility.
Yes, well, let's just have a very brief look at what's going on in other parts of the world. So over in the United States, similar kind of effect going on, but this particular headline is about business rent. So record-breaking rent issues, 40% of US small businesses can't pay. And they produce a graph here. This is from Alignable. 40% of small businesses couldn't afford August rent. And the worst sector is agriculture, and the least worst sector is retail, but they're all between 40 and 50% of businesses couldn't afford their rent in August. So clearly, there's a massive economic disaster going on in the United States at the moment. Soaring electricity prices amid global energy crunch have led to 20 million American households falling behind on their utility bills. So come this winter, the prospect of them actually being able to pay it just isn't there. Same in the UK, and Boris is busy saying, well, don't worry, we're going to maintain supplies. Well, of course, it's very easy to maintain supplies when there's no demand, and there's no demand because of the cost. Then we come to France, and this article in The Connection, Macron, France is at the end of its age of abundance. Well, let's just have a look at what this says. President Emmanuel Macron has called for unity from his government as he warns that France is the end of its age of abundance due to the crisis caused by climate change, international conflict, and continued supply chain issues. We've lived through this stoppage of supply during the COVID period, and we're reliving it now even more intensely. He said, when you look at France, Europe, and the rest of the world, democracy and human rights, the teleology, that's the doctrine or ideology of the world order over the last few years, has demolished some things we took for granted. It is also the end for those that had it of a type of indifference. War began again in Europe 6 months ago to the day. For many generations in our country, war is a reality which no longer existed. At the same time, the climate crisis and all its effects are there tangibly, and the new risks are appearing all the time, like cyber attacks. We're living through a huge shift. And I'm just going to remind everybody at this point of what Mark Carney said in 2019. We will not get to net zero in a niche. It requires a whole economy transition. And just 30 seconds, David, that whole economy transition means a shutdown.
It means shutdown. It means poverty. It means you are the carbon they wish to cancel. Net zero means a move towards a more limited lifestyle that's less able to promote human thriving and is more able to promote human degradation and decline.
Yes.
David, I'll add to that over the last few weeks, in particular, when we've done interviews with professional people. Many of them, I've put it to them that if you can't understand the policies that are being put into place, enacted at the moment, try thinking that we are being attacked by our own government. The country's being destroyed from within. And I've been utterly fascinated that many of the people I've spoke to, professional, educated people, are saying, yes, this makes sense. We are being attacked and destroyed by our own government.
Yes, I was interviewing an economist from the United States, Bob Murphy, yesterday. That will be on the UK column shortly. And I put this to him, and he's a very cautious guy. He's an economist. He likes to have data for everything he says. I put it to him that what we're seeing is not simply error and mistake. We're seeing a maliciousness in government policy and an underlying philosophy that means that is very much intentional. And he said he agreed. He said, yes, it's not difficult to go to the higher echelons of the UN and others and find quotes from leading people who are basically saying, yes, we need to drastically reduce world population and we need to drastically change the entirety of Western society and civilization. They're on the record. These goals and ambitions are not hidden, and they are to destroy.
Okay, well, let's welcome Alex onto the program then. And well, in your Eastern approaches, guys, Alex, let's have a look at the economic situation towards the east. So Germany and Poland.
We will, Mike, but before we leave France behind, on this point of not being able to pay the fuel bills, the mayor of the town of Montarterre in the Département de l'Oise, north of Paris, has announced that he's simply not going to pay the fourfold gas bill increase for his town council. However, he is a communist, so that won't be replicated everywhere. He is perhaps an example of these refractory Gauls whom Macron famously deplored. And as with that mention of insouciance just there in the quotation, let's not skirt by this. Macron is using these core words of French self-identity, refractory and insouciant, and even teleology, which really means the purpose of life, a big issue in French politics. What is the good life? He's saying that's all gone by the board now. In another quotation of his once, he said he's met people who are des nuls, they're nobodies. That was a big shock around the time he was first elected. So even France is showing what the game is. But we're going to go a little further east to Germany and Poland. Zero Hedge here, which is always excellent on such matters, has picked up a Reuters report, and Poland and Germany are both on this slide. That is no mistake. It is because Tyler Durden, the key writer for Zero Hedge, I think the founder, has spotted this as one single trend. The graph on screen indexes at 100 the most frequent mentions that there have ever been for the search term Brennholz or firewood in German searches, according to Google Trends. So you've guessed it, the most popular time in history for Germans to have searched for firewood is right now, and it's more than twice as much as during the 2007-2008 winter crash. But Poland was mentioned, so we'll see that in a moment. But on to a summer piece, because if you tap that again, you will see that this is a July special. Zero Hedge is good at subscribing to the financial press information and giving us the juice. So this piece from mid-July notes that a Deutsche Bank briefing for its paying people who want to be in the know had already foreseen that, quote, wood will be used for heating purposes where possible in the third and most negative of the three scenarios it was forecasting for what the Germans were going to do this winter. So that's Europe's and allegedly one of the world's economic powerhouses expecting that the plebs would be heating themselves with firewood. One country to the east, Poland, a very sophisticated economy and society, but nevertheless one which continues to rely on coal in the rural areas and among the poorer people. There's at least 10% of the Polish population that depend on coal as their main heating source for the winter. So Reuters here, in the piece that Zero Hedge picked up on, reports that there are very long queues, people sleeping in cars and parking their tractors up and going home for the night and returning to their tractor place in the queue the next morning in order to pick up a few tons of coal per person to heat a farmhouse or a home for the winter. And this is, as I say, that something that's, yes, you're bringing on screen now, the image with which Reuters tweeted this out, or rather one of the Reuters pieces, and this was tweeted out by Zero Hedge. You can see a very long snaking queue of large and small vehicles waiting at the gates of a coal distributor. The problem is, of course, that Poland largely produces lignite, which is a lower grade of coal, largely for industrial applications. Most of it is committed to export. What really people want for their home heating is better, competitively priced anthracite in more manageable chunks, and that tends to come from Russia. nicely packaged up in briquettes. Of course, that has now been embargoed because of the EU's unilateral action, and we'll see more examples of European countries having problems with that up to municipal level, like that French mayor I just mentioned. So here are some images from the Reuters report. So here is a pensioner waiting with his small hatchback to get one winter's worth of coal for perhaps just himself and his wife if he's retired, or perhaps anyone else who lives with him. Then we have a gentleman who's been in his tractor there. He goes home every night and comes back to the tractor the next morning to not lose his place in the queue. The next one after that shows truckers waiting to load up a whole truckload of this coal from the Polish production. Of course, the Poles have said that they would have enough to meet domestic requirements, although it's not the ideal kind, but that's proving not to be the case. And I think the last one in that section there, last image, if you tap that again.
No, that's it. The next,
Okay,
we're heading off to retirement age.
Yes, we are. So let's bring that on. That's Germany in the midst of all this is deciding that the thing to do, according to Deutsche Welle, the publicly funded foreign broadcasting in English and other languages, the equivalent of BBC World Service, is saying the thing to do is to hike the retirement age to 70, which to my knowledge no other European country has gone as far as. But of course, if you are the likes of a coal miner, not that there's many of them in Germany anymore, or any manual worker, you're pushing it to get past 55. So the assumption underlying that, of course, is that everyone is office workers. So quite a lot going on. Here is a silent video put out with sound, of course, as well, by Reuters, showing the extent of these queues in Poland. We won't play the whole thing out, but a bit of it, so people get a bit of an atmosphere of what's going on. The commentary on here is quoting people as saying that there was some profiteering going on, that people were bagging a place in the queue largely in order to resell the coal in smaller quantities. You can see that, as usual for the Poles, being dignified people and stoic, they're not being very demonstrative about what's going on, but this is their best hope for the rural and poorer and older people in Poland. This is their hope of not freezing this winter in a notoriously cold country on a plain that gets whistling winds all winter and snow most winters. This is their best hope of not having to fork out hand over fist for gas, even if they do have a natural gas connection. You can see the communist era infrastructure there straining to cope with all this, because the Eastern Bloc, of course, was intended as a whole, and Polish and East German lignite was meant to go all around the former Soviet bloc. And largely be used for industrial purposes. So Politico, based in Brussels, in the midst of this, has got something pretty dramatic. The governor of the central bank, not all central bank governors think alike, here's the proof, Mr. Glapiński, who is a close ally of the Kaczynski brothers, of course, one of whom died in the Smolensk plane crash in 2010, has come out with this, German territorial designs. Of course, his wing of Polish politics is utterly and resolutely opposed to Donald Tusk and accuses him of being Brussels' man to Germanize Europe. He talks about a German Reich wanting to take over, but if we put that back, we will see the original article for those who read Polish or want to read it, run it through an online translating service in the Gazeta Polska, to see that really the governor of the central bank of a fairly major European Union member state is saying, and the whole point of the interview is about the euro, that the euro is inevitably leading to this, that ultimately Poland will lose the likes of Silesia and East Prussia back to the Germans. So quite a lot going on there, which at root has this energy disturbance behind it. We cannot leave the section on Poland and Germany without mentioning this. We do have a Ukraine section forthcoming as well, but this really needs little further introduction than putting the image on the screen. Mikhail Gorbachev, aged just over 80, 1931 to 2022, has finally died. He was in very poor health for a long time. Without having a whole discussion about him, I would say that in the West, he is regarded as the savior of his country because of his perestroika and glasnost. But in Russia and satellite countries, both the committed communists and the committed nationalists curse the man and regard him as a globalist, as a traitor. And if you look at individual cases like the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, other ethnic conflicts in the Caucasus and Central Asia, or indeed with what happened with the reunification of Germany, the well-hidden reality, which is known to people who fought I think on both sides of those struggles, 1988 to 91 roughly, is that Gorbachev went in menacingly. And in fact, the late Christopher Story, arguably the best ever deep researcher of what the European Union is, pretty uniquely reported that Gorbachev actually punched a member of parliament, I won't forget whether it was a commoner or a lord's, in the stomach and winded him during a 1984 visit because he understood better English than he let on, and some anti-communist remark was made. The man was, I'm afraid to say, a bully and a fraud.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Alex. Well, I'd just like to bring this one in if we're talking economics. This was the BBC a couple of days ago. Just a fantastic little article. Ukraine grain ship with aid for Ethiopia docks in Djibouti. And okay, this all seems very positive. Let's have a look at some of the stats that went with it. What are the ships leaving Ukraine carrying? And the biggest cargo, 791,689 tons, was corn. We've then got wheat, sunflower, barley, rapeseed, soya, sugar beet, and peas. And the BBC crowing that the first ship carrying food aid on behalf of the World Food Programme arrived at its destination today. But then we get into the heart of it because they've got another infographic where you can see the number of ships by the size of the dots. Where have the Ukraine grain ships headed so far? And what you quickly see is that all of the Ukrainian grain has been hoovered up by relatively rich and wealthy countries. And if you see where the poor countries have taken a ship, it's one or two at the most. India's very, very small. Djibouti is there. So the BBC propaganda absolutely helping the line that this grain is now feeding the richer people in the world. Meanwhile, the poorer people are left to one or two odd ships. But the BBC doesn't make any valid criticism of what's happening here.
Yes. Okay. If you like what the UK column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to community.ukcolumn.org. There are options to help us out there. You can pick something up on the UK column shop, but please do share any material you find on the various platforms. Right, quick advert for Alternative View.
Yes, well, coming up this Sunday, a few people are saying to the UK column, yes, but I don't know where to find the details. So we're going to say to you today, please freeze your screen. And there is the web address. You can go to the Alternative View website and find out all the details. Very pleased to say that ticket sales have gone well, but there are still tickets available if you'd like to join. And as I've said many times before, the reason this event is so important is it will be the Kickstarter for live events, which form the whole basis for AV in years gone by. And of course, this is happening due to the support of UK Column. And Mike will be very busy in the studio helping this live this web-based broadcast to take place. We'll just put in an advert for the psychology of COVID vaccine injuries, and this is Dr. Christian Buckland and Caroline Power speaking together at Stroud Thursday, let's put in the detail there, Thursday the 1st of September at 7 p.m, Lansdowne Hall, Stroud, GL5 1BB. Tickets are £10. Or pay, well, you can either book that or pay on the door. But this is a very important talk. Dr. Christian Buckland, has psychology been weaponized? Media, science, and the COVID crisis. And Caroline Pova, beg your pardon, is giving life through the lens of the vaccine injured. So this is an important thing. They're quoting other people that are now starting to speak out on all of the injuries as the result of vaccinations. And as we're hearing today, of course, younger children are affected. If you freeze this screen, you can see more of the details. And you can also go to the details, booking tickets, etc.
Alex, very briefly, please, on these. First of all, a Telegram channel you wanted to highlight?
Yes, a loyal viewer has, and he's let us know and he's doing it, put out extracts of UK Column's main broadcasts, and with a link to our community website, which is we welcome because, of course, our subscribers get to debate things there and look for follow-up because they're paying. Membership is the only thing that funds us, as we don't take adverts. Onto the next mention is something that I did when I was with David a couple of weeks ago. Is we arranged a rematch 2 years on of our original talk with John Cullen, an American cartographer and statistics whiz, which went extremely well, I would say. So that's on the homepage at the moment. We have a literally 1 minute extract of that now, where David was making to John the key point about the MHRA silently changing its previous standard line on the maximum of 10% of serious adverse effects that ever get reported to a yellow card. And David in this clip is saying what that entails for the contradictory way in which the authorities have to treat yellow card data now.
Now, if you then take this information to a politician in Britain, or in fact many of the government agencies, what the reaction is well, they start to attack their own data. This data, anyone can report to this system. We don't know if this is genuine.
It's
don't
a talking
know.
point on chat shows. People rustle their talking point papers, politicians and media people, and say, but this is just Johnny Q public who's clueless,
Sure.
which isn't actually true.
It's not true. And this doesn't mean anything. We don't know anything about these people. So they actually attack the data. So they've gone from saying this data is a vital early warning system that might catch 10% of the serious cases to this is garbage and we can't trust it. And then when the regulator is forced to answer the question, what are you doing about safety? They point to the same data. They point to the yellow card system saying we're monitoring. We've got the yellow card system. So it's simultaneously the gold standard of safety monitoring and garbage. It just depends who you're asking, under what context, and what they need to say to defend the status quo.
So in the old literary quotation about believing 6 impossible things before breakfast time, well, that's the state that our regulator or pharmaceutical enabler has now got to, and they are at the pinnacle. So any politician or bureaucrat who's asked about this will refer up to the MHRA. Finally, in the mentions from me, we have bitten the bullet and launched a letters to the editor page. The first edition I'm entitling The Great Escape. There is a Hull viewer with his dear mum, and you'll see why he's put that photograph in if you read the letters. They cover 3 quite different issues, but the common theme is making a great escape. And I just say, don't imagine that from now on we're going to be publishing a great bulk of letters that are purpose written as letters to the editor. But on the other hand, if we like what people in a natural and spontaneous manner write to us, then we will consider featuring it. Straight on to the Ukraine, because time is short. A quotation on screen that has appeared in the British press referring to the former Foreign Secretary Lord Lansdowne, who was no longer Foreign Secretary during the First World War, but in 1916 he wrote in an opinion piece that the nation should sue for peace with Germany. And the quotation is, if Lord Lansdowne had been listened to, we would have had no Russian Revolution, no Stalin, no Hitler, no Mussolini, and no Second World War. Britain would have survived as a major power for many decades longer than she did. Almost all world wars end in ugly compromise. We were only able to defeat Hitler because Stalin was on our side, and Stalin, exacted a huge price, including gobbling up Poland, the country whose independence we had gone to war to save. If you're wondering who that was, Mike, if you can tap that again, we will find out who it was. That is Peter Hitchens writing in the Daily Mail under the title, "A long war in Ukraine will bring nothing but death, poverty and ruin. It's time for peace." Hitchens has had it with being called a traitor and a Jeremiah, and he's got the historical learning to substantiate what he's saying. What else is going on in the Ukraine? Let's go on to the next slide and have a look. Sadiq Khalid is one of many who are reporting the Member of Parliament, Oleksiy Kovalyov, only 33 years old, has become the 6th politician, in fact, the 6th Member of Parliament in some countings, but certainly the 6th politician who was taken out by a hit squad. He was blasted with a pump-action shotgun alongside his wife, in other reports his girlfriend, but in any case the woman with whom he lived, and she was stabbed to death. And that was the 6th assassination of a so-called collaborator. I've gone and have a look at the Ukrainian press to see what's going on here. So here, RBK Ukraine is reporting right there in the headline that Kovalyov was a, quote, collaborationist parliamentarian, and is saying that Russia has confirmed the death because it seems to be in the part of the country he was in, Kherson, the Russians were controlling criminal investigations on the ground. Latifundist.com, which has a particular focus on agro-business, and this is, the south of the Ukraine has got these huge wheat fields, as we've just been talking about. They're going further and talking about him as a traitor, Agraria Zradnik, so a traitor farmer. It turns out that he became the deputy head of the regional administration for the portfolio of agriculture, and he may have made local enemies. He may have been on the make. He may even have had an eye to the main chance in turning to collaborating with the Russians, who now hold the territory where his parliamentary seat is situated. But being blasted away with a pump-action shotgun and his wife stabbed to death is being giggled at by the Ukrainian press as something that he had coming, and by a lot of Westerners as well. On to Jordan Schachtel, who writes in one of the best Substack blogs, The Dossier, Black Hole, as billions in American arms and aid enter Ukraine, US officials receive handwritten receipts. Tap that again and you will see the details. That it's actually been in Bloomberg, a very mainstream source. There was an article over the weekend about a torrent of cash for Ukraine arms, and they quote an inspector general at the Pentagon, Sean O'Donnell, who says that Ukrainian officials do their accounting of US equipment and aid with hand receipts. It's all paper. O'Donnell added that he doesn't think they have much fidelity as to where the arms end up. That's rather diplomatic language. Straight on to the next slide. Les Echos, the French equivalent of the Financial Times, the paper for business owners, is asking, can we lose the Ukraine war? Of course, it's, as you'd expect of such a title, it's going on about the challenges to EU unity, but they are actually flying the flag, running the flag up the flagpole, the idea that it may be time to sue for peace. Germany has the same issues. So here, the Mitteldeutsche Zeitung reports that in Dessau, one of Germany's many mid-sized cities dominated by small and medium enterprises that work hard over generations, 2,000 of the members of the local craftsmen's guild, which is a big deal in a German city, have demanded peace on the Dessau Market Square. I think we have lost the silent video for that, haven't we? Or we've at least got a still image here where the craftsmen are demonstrating. Mike, do we have the video for that?
No,
or
we
not?
don't. We don't. But we should just say that there were actually, it was a huge crowd.
It was a huge crowd for a small city, and this, you should bear in mind that if you haven't been to Germany much, that these people have a lot of weight. They would, of course, be derided by many because they're all local men of a certain age, obviously right of centre in their convictions, not dependent on the state for their funding. Because they have their businesses. But just to read out a couple of summaries of what was said there, Karl Krökel, who is the district master craftsman, so the head of the guild basically for the self-employed specialists in Dessau, said, we are experiencing an energy policy disaster for which the government alone is responsible. Private refineries in India are buying cheap oil from Russia and supplying the world market, while a German refinery in Schwede is on the brink of collapse. The government is burdening us with immense inflation. We were deliberately placed in an energy emergency. There is fear in this country, and that can't be right. Anyone who says that arms deliveries to Ukraine are needlessly prolonging an unwinnable war are being defamed as Putin's mates, and a respectful discourse is no longer possible. This isn't some activist saying this. This is a very staid kind of man, as you've just seen. The president of a peace bureau, Rainer Braun, spoke about living in madness, and there's an urgent need to return to negotiations. And the former state secretary from the German Federal Environment Ministry, Michael Müller, said that this war is the result of a broken promise and a winning mentality that did not negotiate on equal footing with Russia, which brings us back to the just deceased Gorbachev, who was over 90, my mistake, when he died. Here in the Netherlands, we have some knock-on effects of the coordinated sanctions. So the Dutch blogger Kevin WP has reported that the city of The Hague, not the official capital, but it is where the government and the royal family are located, has, as a city at council level, applied for a temporary exoneration of EU sanctions against Russia. Like many Dutch and European cities, it has a council level contract directly with Gazprom to supply the municipal fuel bill. And if you tap that again, you will see that the councillor, Mrs. Saskia Bruiners, who holds the City Council portfolio for international affairs and services, has for the first time now admitted in a letter to her colleagues on the City Council that they are scrabbling around to find alternative suppliers, but they won't manage to do so before the deadline of the 10th of October, which the EU has set, to pull out of all existing contracts with Gazprom. The European Commission asked about it, had nothing to say. And as you put on screen there, if you want to read it in English what's going on, you can see that Reuters has picked up on this. So it's not just the alternative scene talking about this. Azra Dale, one of our best bloggers and members, has her own Substack where she has caught that Ukraine donors could face federal prosecution. This is as a result of what Vanessa Beeley reported about the drive to get Westerners to spend a lot of money to sponsor a rocket. So she has quoted in the page the legal writer for the Italian General Staff, who has concluded in a paper that she's embedded in her Substack page here that international law does not actually allow a civilian cyber combatant, such as somebody who pays online for the bombing of Russia, to be considered a lawful combatant. So this is unfair in equality or equity or ethics. Even people who call themselves the Ukraine IT army are warning these Western armchair generals that if they get involved, they could actually legitimately be taken out. There's a disparity of arms there. That's the ethical issue, and that's on screen at the moment about the use of kinetic force, which people can freeze. But you are actually opening yourself up under international law, the Tallinn Protocol, the Geneva Convention, and the whole lot, to being subject to a targeted assassination for funding such things as a rocket on the Russians.
Okay.
This one is actually Alex's.
Yes,
Alex.
This ties up with that. Reuters noted that a crowdfunding website is raising money for the Ukrainian army by selling revenge messages, which of course is Vanessa's piece, and she's noted already that Reuters picked up on it after she did. This was retweeted by Ben Pyle, who's quite big on Twitter, who wrote some cynical and apt remarks about this. You too can kill some foreign child. And somebody underneath has replied to that with, is this Reuters just catching up with UK Column, who reported on this days ago? Well done, Lapib.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're going to have a look at some very, very short film clips to illustrate what's been happening in Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainians did attack in many places along the front line. They were quickly rebuffed by the Russians with very, very heavy casualties. But I wanted to say, Mike, isn't it interesting that Boris Johnson didn't have a reply to the questions about the pitiful state of UK? Of course, it was only a few days ago that Boris Johnson was back in Ukraine to see Zelensky, and many of the knowledgeable commentators looking at local newspapers and reports suspect that one of the things that Boris Johnson was doing was encouraging Zelensky to call for this so-called offensive. They haven't got the troops or the weapons to do it. So this is the sort of thing that took place. Some of this is disturbing. There's nothing particularly graphic, but you'll understand that this is not the most pleasant thing to say. So Ukrainian offensive consisted largely of very small groups of troops trying to move forward. Sometimes, as we will see, they had armored vehicles with them. But ultimately, all the Russians did is ramped up their shelling, and these troops were ultimately killed, taken out where they stood. This is what happened when armored vehicles were involved. So you can see very clearly here we've got, I think they're armored personnel carriers. The one that's hit may ultimately be a tank. And encourage people to go and see and check sources themselves. There are many very good reporters now talking about what's happening. But these Ukrainians dying completely needlessly, but simply as a result of Zelensky's interaction with the West. This is where it gets very, very serious, and we can see the sheer force of the Russian systems being unleashed on defended areas by the Ukrainians. Nobody knows at the moment exactly how many Ukrainians died in the offensive, but certainly in one area they seem to be talking about casualties of over 1,000 killed. This shows the scale of the detonations on the ground. And if we move on here, it's been reported in many places that there were many ambulances called into action in the big cities to cope with the scale of the injured Ukrainian soldiers. And also there were calls throughout Ukraine for people to donate blood. So this is particularly sad, and this is as a result of the West fighting this proxy war to the last Ukrainian. There are also many reports of Ukrainians now refusing to fight. I haven't got the translation of the text here, but there are many reports both Russian and Ukrainian sources. This is yet another one here. And I'm just going to end by putting up the Ukrainian MP assassinated, because, of course, what is actually happening now is Ukraine is descending into a dictatorship which is largely out of control, and people are being murdered for showing any signs of wanting to challenge the conduct of the war or relations with Russia.
Yeah, so what we've been reporting over the last few weeks of Britain effectively training many of these people that are being sent back to the front to die. 5 weeks training they're getting before they go? Well, the EU's decided to get involved in this as well. So the EU held a defense ministers meeting yesterday, and well, here's the doorstep. We're not going to play the video clip, but Joseph Borrell, the High Representative, in other words, the Foreign Minister, at the informal meeting of defense ministers, ministers will discuss the idea of putting in place a high-level training mission for the Ukraine army, because Britain's training program isn't going quickly enough. We need more people dying on the front lines, apparently.
And that is what's going to happen to them, because they're going to be facing shelling and they're going to die.
In the meantime, last week we were talking about the fact that the idea of anybody pushing any kind of narrative contrary to the government narrative is being blamed or accused of being Kremlin propagandist. Well, this continues. Here's the Daily Beast tweeting this out. Kremlin-controlled propagandists are hard at work promoting the Breitbart-produced film My Son Hunter. This is the one that Patrick showed the trailer for at the very end of the program on Friday. And the tweet goes on to say, which sets to premiere on the 7th of September and apparently centers on the various conspiracy theories about US President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Well, that one tweet is a disgrace. Now, coming back to Russia then, the mainstream press was saying how serious it was that the Russians were holding their Vostok 2022 exercise in the east of the country, with China taking part as well. But in fact, it wasn't just China that was taking part. So Vostok 22 Strategic Command Post exercise focuses on military security in the eastern region, is what they pushed out on this is the Russian Ministry of Defense on their Telegram channel. Vostok 2022 Strategic Command Post exercise will be held from 1st of September to the 7th of September 2022, headed by the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. A total of more than 50,000 servicemen, more than 5,000 pieces of weapons and military equipment, 140 aircraft, 60 ships, boats and support vessels will be involved. But look at the list of countries. So we've got what they're describing as the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and other partner states, including Azerbaijan, Algeria, Armenia, Belarus, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, China, Laos, Mongolia, Nicaragua, and Syria, and the Republic of Tajikistan. So this is not just about Russia and China. This is a much broader base. And Alex, just in 10 seconds, is this who we're going to view as the enemies in a forthcoming war?
Well, it's a contiguous bloc, isn't it? It's Russia right through to Southeast Asia, very much overlapping with the old communist bloc. But even countries that are in a hot shooting war with each other at the moment, Armenia and Azerbaijan, would prefer to stay in this collective security arrangement because they know what's coming if they step out of it.
Yes. Okay, and let's look at our next Prime Minister, perhaps Liz Truss, and well, her spokesperson was speaking out about her new stance on China. Liz has toughened the UK's stance on Beijing since becoming Foreign Secretary and would continue to take a hawkish stance as Prime Minister, says her spokesperson. The spokesperson goes on to say she's been active in calling out China's economic coercion, working with G7 and other allies to mobilize investments into low and middle income countries as a counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And I would just make the point, if Liz Truss is taking a stronger position on China, well, that seems to fit pretty well with what the Grey Zone was talking about in this article. Operation Surprise, leaked emails expose secret intelligence coup to install Boris Johnson. And in this article, they were saying that the Richard Dearlove cabal, Gwithian Prince, and so on, had effectively helped Boris Johnson. They'd helped remove Theresa May, put Boris Johnson into power. But then when Boris Johnson was still being soft on China, at the end, they felt that it was time for him to go. and suddenly Liz Truss is taking a much more bullish view on China. That maybe it's just a coincidence, but I just reminded everybody, of course, that Politico attacked the Grey Zone for highlighting that particular email leak and the implications of it.
Yeah.
So, Alex, let's come on to this then. And this is a Pentagon statement, apparently. Russian military unlikely to succeed in recruitment.
According to The Hill, reporting from Washington, the Pentagon is sneering at this possible increase in the size of the Russian armed forces, up to 130,000, if I remember correctly. And a senior officer was quoted anonymously as saying to The Hill, many of these new recruits have been observed as older, unfit, and ill-trained. On to the next slide to see how the Americans are doing with their army recruitment right now. Associated Press reports, our army program gives poor performing recruits a second chance. They start that article by talking about a man who over a decade has failed the army's basic academic competence test 10 times and who's still being encouraged to retry. And if you tap this slide, you will find the meat of it, which is that General McConville, who's in charge of this whole department of the army, says, we have some young men and women, he's talking about nearly 30 in some cases, that this isn't euphemisms for teenagers, that want to serve, that have some challenges on the academic and physical side here. And what we want to do is give them that opportunity. So they're getting school board exercises on how to calculate a 6% sales tax, how to calculate speed, how to read, how to write, and then on the fitness side, those who are over between 2 and 6% over the body fat standards for their age and sex, or gender as it's now called, of course, are also being encouraged to have a go again. Russia does not seem to have this kind of problem. Well, let's go on quickly to the next slide. There's broader problems, and we do not want to make capital out of anyone's death. We're treading carefully here, but yet another US Navy suicide. Military.com reports it. Aircrew aviation electrician's mate, striker Brandon Caserta, a long rank title, a 21-year-old man. It's taken 4 and a bit years for his inquest to come through, but the details, if you tap that again, are pretty awful. He was being bullied basically to drive, although it was known that he couldn't drive and had a phobia about driving. He was being told, you will drive the big 18-seater and take your turn with all the others who are in your rank on this station. And he decided to walk into the spinning tail rotor of an MH-60S helicopter, having first apologized to the pilot that he would have to go and see that. And in his suicide note, he asked his parents to, quote, go after the process called a re-rate, which put him in a job that the Navy knew he hated and was unsuitable for. And he wanted as many people in his chain of command as possible, quote, fired, kicked out, or at the very least lose rank. US Navy at sea, what's going on there? Well, Coast Guard, not the Navy, but vessels anyway, requested to refuel in the Solomon Islands in a sensitive part of the Pacific. And tap that again and you will see that the Solomons decided not to respond to the US Coast Guard vessel Oliver Henry's request to refuel in port. Halfway down that page, you see that HMS Spey, a Royal Navy patrol vessel also taking part in this anti-illegal fishing operation in the Pacific, requested port access and apparently was declined, but the Royal Navy spokesperson said by email that we will not comment on this. So it looks like the Solomons are not being not minded to serve as refueling stations there. A bit more on this segment. This is notable because of who's tweeted it out. It's not just a meme. One of these 9-pane ideas of what people think I am. People will know this meme. The bottom right-hand corner is the important one because it's a 9/11 theme. What America supposedly actually does is allegedly, according to this meme, blow up its own buildings. Who tweeted this? Let's tap that again, and we will see that it's Chao Lijian, who is in doing so is saying even a nation needs a clear understanding of himself. Chao Lijian is not just any government official. Tap one more time and you will see that he is the number 2 at the Chinese Foreign Ministry's Department of Information. He is in fact the MFA's official spokesman. He has a long history of tweeting out spicy and provocative things, including on American race relations and other social problems. But there you go. Somebody pretty high up the pecking order. The Chinese equivalent of Maria Zakharova is now actually talking about a supposed American culpability for 9/11, and nobody bats an eyelid.
Yes, well, we'll just very quickly move on to this. And this report here from Rear Admiral Moorhouse on the sad state of the HMS Prince of Wales, which, as we reported a couple of days ago, was leaving Portsmouth to head over to the United States to take part in various exercises and also the Atlantic Future Forum event at the end of September. Unfortunately, it broke down straight after leaving port. It's currently moored off the coast of the Isle of Wight. They're moving it to a safer mooring where they're going to try and work out exactly what the problem is. But this is a spectacular PR disaster and soft power disaster, Brian, bearing in mind that's really all the use of these ships is for soft power projection.
Well, you're absolutely right, Mike. It's disastrous, but of course this was coming because the decay and breakdown that we're seeing in wider society, whether it's the police or the NHS, has also been happening inside the military. And many years ago, UK Column was told that the Royal Navy simply couldn't cope with refits of the larger ships because there was no experience left, particularly in the engineering officer class. So this is deliberate breakdown. The country's being hollowed out. We're being attacked. But let's just end with this amazing find, and I'm going to thank John very much, a UK Column viewer, for sending this in. This is Serco calling all landlords. Serco provides asylum accommodation and support services in the northwest of England, Midlands and east of England. Our purpose is the provision of accommodation, transportation and subsistence payments for asylum seekers whilst their claims are being processed. We're looking for landlords and investors across the northwest, Midlands and east of England. All types of properties are required. So asylum seekers for profit. This is using the suffering of immigration and asylum seekers so that the biggest company you've never heard of, Serco, there's a really excellent YouTube video about Serco under that title, the biggest company you've never heard of, can make profits. And here's a bit of the detail from the website where they're asking for landlords to get in touch, and you can fill in a whole load of detail about the properties you've got. So public assets being sold off. Mike, you've talked about that many times before. And now we've got these private companies simply coming in to break down the nature of the UK as a nation state, all for profit, of course.
Yes. So we leave it there.
I think we should leave it there. We probably should choose a meme. So should we do that for you, Alex?
Choose what you think most suitable, Brian, out of my clutch. And those of you who are subscribers will get to see the rest in extra time. Here we are. This is the wonderful meme of the non-playing character, whom I'd never heard of until David, who is older than me, spotted them. So age is no barrier to meme savviness. Here we have the non-playing character. The idea of this character is it's somebody who doesn't have a mind of their own. They're just told what to think by the media. And this character is saying, hey, cool, government's trying to make my life easier with a digital currency, central bank digital currency. And with narrow tunnel vision, the character is only seeing convenience right ahead and is missing the factors zero privacy, cybersecurity attacks, zero anonymity, all your movements and actions are traceable, centralization, frozen funds, access to your money can be turned off at any moment, every transaction documented, social credit scores, vulnerability to state and foreign actors, and banks have full control of every penny you own.
Yes.
Yeah. Alex, David, Debbie, thank you very much for joining us. We really had too much to cover today because, of course, the news around us is becoming more incredible by the day, but we'll do our best to cover the key aspects. And I'm just going to say once again to viewers and listeners, have a think about the concept that if you cannot understand policies being put into place by the government, when you see the damage and the collapse and the suffering, simply ask yourself, could it be that the UK government is now essentially a foreign power attacking its own public? Many people think that this twist starts to answer some key questions, but I'll leave you to think about that.
Back in a few minutes for some extra.
We will. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.